Hi, everyone. Good afternoon or good morning, good evening. We will start this webinar in about 2 minutes. We'll just give everyone the time to log on to the GoToWebinar system. Thanks. All right, welcome everyone to this webinar on the standardized impact metrics for the off-grid solar sector. During this session, we'll have the revised white paper launch, and we will also launch the online calculator tool. I'll kick off with just a little bit of housekeeping. Everyone, except for the presenters, of course, will be automatically muted. If you have a question or a technical problem, you can always drop it in the question box that is on the right-hand side of your screen. We will be collecting questions for a Q&A session at the end. If you have a question for a specific presenter, then make sure that you mention the name of that person. And yeah, please also share your name and affiliation. The session will be recorded and shared afterwards. We'll take an hour, but we'll make sure that we don't take up extra time from your end. So we'll have a hard stop at 3 p.m. Central European time. So I'm very happy to introduce my fellow panelists. So myself, I am Evelyn. I am the Impact and Outreach Manager at GOGLA, where I've been coordinating our impact working group and where we've been working on the revision of the framework that we are now so proudly presenting to you today. Nabila leads on impact for energy access and efficiency within the CDC group. So they are a major investor in distributed energy. And over the last 3 years, Nabila has helped steer the GOGLA Impact Working Group as one of the chairs, bringing all of her years of experience in impact investment and measurement and reporting. I'm also very happy that my other co-chair, my other chair is joining us. Yomi Yegede is operations manager for Greenlight Planet in Nigeria. He has joined at the end of 2019 and has been reinforcing our impact working group ever since. So, and I think from his role as operations manager, he knows pretty much firsthand of all the challenges that consumers and agents face and how basically our lighting products are creating impact. Then Last but not least, my colleague Chef is also on the line with us. He manages GOGLA's research program around socioeconomic impact of the sector. A lot of what he has worked on has fed into the revision of the metrics. So and he'll be here demonstrating the online calculator tool. So yeah, basically with their support, we'll focus during the webinar on the following agenda items. So we'll have an intro to impact metrics and measurements in the off-grid solar sector. We'll give some more background why GOGLA's framework was developed. Then we'll go and explain briefly how the metrics work and what is new in the revision. We'll showcase the online calculator tool, and then we will make sure that we have enough time left for a Q&A session where we will aim to answer all of your questions. Now, before we start, there's two quick polls actually, and I'm going to launch the first one. So the first one is really which category best fits your organization. So it's really just to know who we have on the line, to kind of get your attention as well, get everyone engaged. It will be very useful for us to know what's the profile of the of the organizations that are interested in impact measurement in the off-grid sector. So I'm going to leave it for 2 more seconds. We have about 2/3 that voted. The results are that we have around 40% of commercial businesses, 25% private investors, and 35% others. I'm immediately following up with a second poll, which is, and it will be very interesting for us to know, how familiar you are with the impact metrics. And then specifically the impact metric framework that GOGLA has developed, the standardized framework. So we're launching a revision right now, but the impact metric framework has been, it's been developed a couple of years back, and it's been around and revised and elaborated upon. And so we're very curious to know how the uptake is, who is using them, who's not, and for what purposes. Oh, fantastic. I think literally almost everyone has voted. Quickly sharing the results here. Let me check. Well, this is very exciting to see that almost 50% is at least familiar with them. So that's really great. I'm very, very motivated to show what we've been improving and what the new revision brings. And then I'm also quite excited that there's people on there that know less of the metrics. So this is our opportunity to showcase them to you. And with that, I would love to invite Nabila to take over this first section.
Thank you, Evelyn. Hi, good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you're joining us from. So it's great to see such a mix of organizations as well as participants who've heard of these, who are familiar with them, and those also who for them it might be their first time actually hearing about them. So this is within the Impact Working Group, developing quantitative metrics or quantifiable metrics using sales data has been really quite a big driving force in making sure that as an industry we are harmonized in how we're reporting our impact. As many of you will agree that quantitative metrics are much easier to use, to report on, and also for people to understand. For instance, some of the metrics that we have is emissions avoided. We also look at kind of access to energy numbers. But what we've noticed in the industry, and for those who've been here for a long time, and even those who are new would have realized that there are really a lot of different standards for different reports, different investors ask for different requirements. And what we were finding was that actually there are, for the same metric, it was being calculated with different methodologies being used. And there was also, in terms of everyone would want to, for instance, report on climate benefits, for instance, but there were differences in topics and metrics that were being used to report on. And there were also a number of sort of one-off requests for closing of press releases. Basically, what it led to was a not very harmonized set of metrics and methodology that we as an industry could report on. And as expected, it was really leading to comparisons of apples and oranges, which can have a negative effect on both the industry as well as individual companies. So over the last few years, we've been developing a set of metrics. Next slide, please. And what the impact metrics framework, and for those who've seen earlier versions of these, the latest revision is being published. As Evelyn has said, we will launch the white paper on these. So they're really designed to be simple to use. They're robust based on a lot of analysis and data that's available out from a number of the members as well as others of the impact working group. They are conservative to ensure that we are really careful about how we're reporting this, and they're also harmonized. Now, the standardized metrics and their comparable impact, really it's enabling us to understand the impact outside of direct sales alone. What it enables companies to do is that it streamlines their reporting and enables them to attract investors. As we know, there's a huge plethora of impact investors who want to crowd into the industry. And this is one way to ensure that we can communicate the impact that allows them to align to their investment strategies. For investors, and I can also speak for CDC as being one of the investors in the industry, it really enables us to understand the impact of our investments with a strong level of confidence. And not only at the individual investee levels, but for instance, within CDC, we have quite a strong solar home system investment strategy, and we can then aggregate it across our portfolio. And for policymakers, it enables catalytic support for regulations. For instance, where regulatory support is required, where it's more sufficient. So as I said, this is something that will be launched shortly. So next slide, please. Oh, thank you. So you would have noticed a number of these impact metrics are also reported within the semi-annual sales and impact data report that GOGLA shares. Now, companies and investors, the way that they use the data can be quite to estimate the impact of their products, of their investments, or even market supporting activities. And GOGLA members can receive individual data on their estimated impact from this exercise. GOGLA actually uses the metrics that you report and the sales data that you report to calculate the impact of its members, as well as IFC associated companies. And this is done twice a year. And it's reported, as I mentioned earlier, in the in the GOGLA solar market report for sales and impact data. A number of sector partners and decision makers actually also use this information. So the Global Impact Investor Network has actually harmonized the metrics into its IRIS catalog and the navigating impact tools. So for investors who are using those resources, rest assured that this is actually also harmonized with GIN's network. And the metrics and impact estimates are also used by sector partners, including IFC, Lighting Global, SE4All, IRENA. So really there is broad support for these metrics across the industry and sector partners. So next slide, please. I am now going to hand over to my co-chair, Yomi. I think just overall, in summary, as I've said, as an investor really for CDC, it enables us really to be able to compare apples with apples, both in terms of the companies that we invest in, but also at the portfolio level. So as an investor, and hopefully we'll get this in maybe in the Q&A with other investors online as well, as how they use this information. Yomi? So tell us, how would you use the impact metrics before you delve into the rest of the presentation?
Oh, awesome! Thanks, Nabil. As Greenlight Planet, we're on the company side, and one of the ways we use these metrics first is in pitching to investors, because these are figures that they want to see all the time. We also use them for marketing related activities like marketing communications. If you go to our website, that's like the basic, but we use them to communicate specifically some data. Sometimes as well in getting certain kind of exemptions, maybe on duties and a few other things, maybe tax considerations. We use this data as well. So those are some basic ways that we use this data. Sometimes as well, we use it to look at our impact within the industry. And sometimes if we get maybe competitor data, we try to see, okay, how are we doing compared to some of our competitors and in the industry generally, right? So yeah, that's how we use the data. So I'll just run through the next few slides. What we have here is some estimates in terms of impact of the off-grid solar industry. This is within second half of 2019. So I'll just start. You'll see here that about 313 million people have ever lived in a household with improved energy access as a direct result of off-grid solar lighting products sold since July 2010. So that's actually from 2010 till then. Then about 107 million people currently living in a household with improved energy access. 63 million people currently access Tier 1 energy services based on the SC4L global tracking framework. Then we have 10.4 million people that currently access Tier 2 energy services based on SC4L global tracking framework. Then we have about 5.2 million people currently undertaking more economic activity as a result of using off-grid solar lighting products. So sometimes we have people that say, because of these products, I'm able to accomplish more, in my business, or I'm able to have maybe another stream of income. So these are people that are categorized in this category. Then we have people that spend more time working as a result of using off-grid solar lighting products. So they work, late into the evenings. Usually they probably have like epileptic power supply, but with solar products now they can do more. Then we have about 2.7 million people using their SHS to support an enterprise. For instance, charging of phones, operating a bar, restaurant, shop, or stall at night. Next slide, please. Yeah, also we have about 5.7 billion additional income generated as a result of off-grid system ownership. These are, this can be directly tracked to or traced to, purchase of a solar product, one solar product or another. Then we have about 11 billion savings on energy expenditure over the expected lifetimes of all portable lanterns or multi-light systems sold since 2010. About 74 billion additional light hours used across all households over the expected lifetime, of all off-grid solar lighting products sold since July 2010 as well. And if you look at next one, we have about 22.8 million kerosene lanterns no longer in use, replaced with off-grid solar lighting products. That's amazing. A lot of CO2 emission has been done away with. About 74 million metric tons of carbon dioxide and black carbon emissions, avoided. This directly ties into the previous point as well. If you look underneath, there is a note that says impact estimates relates to the sale of solar lanterns, solar home systems, and appliances by GOGLA members and IFC associates only. So actually, the overall sector impact is actually larger. Like Nabila mentioned the other time, we try to be as conservative as we can with this data so that we're sure that at least we're not over-reporting. So there is so much more that is done, that might not be captured directly in these impact metrics. Next slide. All right. So the impact working group, what do we do? We oversee the development and revision of the metrics. And, like Evelyn mentioned earlier, is co-chaired currently by CDC Group and Greenlight Planet. And members include off-grid companies, investors, and academics. Metrics are co-created using best available research. So we have research already that, research data that we've received from Acumen, 60 Decibel, Altai, SMAP, Finca, GSMA, London School of Economics, so that is Stockholm University, UNEP, USC, Berkeley, and so on, with input from academic advisors as well. So we try to get basically background data, and we build on them. Metrics are debated and agreed via majority votes before being adopted. So sometimes we spend as much as maybe 2-3 meetings just trying to make sure that we are getting the right input into these metrics, because we understand the impact and how it affects the users. So we try to be as accurate as we can. So it's debated for for a long time, before we actually finalize. Then 4 standardized metrics were piloted in 2015 with formal release in 2016. That's as a matter of history. Next slide. Right. So in terms of this latest revision that we've done, which is the version 4.0, there are a few things that we've included that were not in the previous impact calculator. And one of it is we're able to split by geographic regions now. Sometimes we get data, for instance, you could see that maybe in East Africa, we can say maybe more kerosene lanterns are replaced, for instance. But when you come to certain areas in West Africa, you're not directly replacing kerosene lanterns, or maybe torchlights and things like that. So there are times when the metrics is totally different, based on the regions, and we've tried as to incorporate all of that into this, taking that into consideration. Then revised variables when new research and data became available. So there were data that we received in the course of last year that we had to put in consideration in creating this. So there were things that were definitely changed. Some of them might have been revised higher or lesser, depending on current data that is available in the industry. Then standardized guidelines on how to report on location, for instance, rural versus urban. So how do you classify a rural area? How do you classify an urban area? These are very specifics and usually very important to our investors as well. And then how do you report on jobs? So these are some of the guidelines that were also included in this version. Okay, so I will hand over to my fellow organizer, Trevor, this time to continue.
Thanks, Yomi. Yes, and hi everyone. Yes, so Powering Opportunity is our research series funded by DFID, focusing on the impact of solar home system on primarily rural households in Africa and South Asia. To give you a bit of background, for the first round of Powering Opportunity research in 2018, we worked together with 7 PAYGO companies operating in East Africa. For the second round in 2019, we revisited the same customers in East Africa, but also expanded the research to 4 countries in West Africa and 2 countries in South Asia. And with the second round of research in 2019, we had 2 objectives. First, by going back to the same customers in East Africa, we wanted to better understand how the impact we saw in the first round evolved over time. And second, by expanding the research to West Africa and South Asia, we wanted to get a better understanding of regional differences. Ultimately, we worked together with 11 companies operating in 11 countries, and we interviewed over 7,400 customers. The findings of the second round we presented in 3 regional reports over the last 8 months, and we will release a global report which will bring all the key findings and regional differences together in 2 weeks on the 28th. So do keep an eye out for that. And what it also allowed us to do, like Yomi just mentioned, was to use this data to further refine the metrics and to create a regional split for many of the metrics, such as economic activity, income generation, kerosene replacement. So in short, with the new Powering Opportunity data, we were able to refine our metrics, which are now more accurate than ever, And with the impact calculator, which we will showcase in a moment, we want to make it as easy as possible to actually use the metrics. I think I'll leave it at that for now. We'll show the calculator in a moment. So Evelien, back to you.
Thanks so much, guys. So thanks, Jeff, for highlighting also the powering opportunity work and how that was really crucial for kind of like feeding into this revision. And also both Nabila and Yomi, thank you so much for providing us with the intro. And I think it was really insightful also to hear how, how investors and companies are using the metrics. So from my end, what I'll do now is I will kind of briefly highlight our GOGLA, our impact metrics, our GOGLA impact metrics, and the latest revision. So I'll briefly show you how the metrics work, or how they're put together, and I'll give you some examples of how we're calculating these estimates. So how do they work? The metric formulas and the variables are all created and established through the working group, and so that also means that we really have a set of tailored formulas that are specifically for use of estimating the impact of off-grid solar standalone lighting products. Now, the metrics are set up to be simple to use and to use with or to use readily available data. So you will see that when you want to estimate impact, you will need to input like the sales figures, some product characteristics, some information on product cost, and some of the standard variables that are included in the paper. Now, to support you here, the paper outlines very clearly which coefficients need to be inputted by the user, and for which ones there's this standard value available. The detailed section of the metrics also highlights or outlines the messaging and the assumptions that are made for each metric and variable, so that everyone who uses them is aware of how to phrase the impact message and kind of like what lies behind those estimates. Now I'm going to run you through a number of examples, 3 in total, and each one is becoming slightly more elaborate. So for counting excess, there is, if you want to look at sales of products that are currently working. If we're going to look at this this particular, people with improved energy excellence currently. So there's a multiplication here with 2 factors. These 2 are basically these 1 minus a discount for loss or discount for or default rate, and a discount for repeat sales. Now, these 2 are responsible basically to deduct a certain share of the product that is either on average not working or malfunctioning, and deducting those products that are just being added to a household where there's already a similar product present. So they're basically not adding extra impact. And then this last coefficient here that you see is the household size. So in essence, this is there because behind the customer that is buying the product, there is basically a full household that benefits. Now, if you look at the variables that are in the paper, then you see that this is what you'll find basically. So we are already distinguishing here between business models on how the product is sold. So we're looking, you can either look at cash, you can look at pay-go. So you will have to input the sales number yourself if you're trying to make an estimate for a certain number of products. And if you sell your product on a pay-go basis, you for the discount ratio, for the discount rate, sorry, for discount for loss should be here actually. You have a knowledge, if you sell it on a pay-go basis, you have a knowledge of which percentage of products are on average not working. So that is something you have to input yourself. But then for the others, we have established an average, and for household size, we have established that we're using a household size of 5.5 people per household across all categories. Then a second example is if you want to have a look at the number of people generating additional income when using your products. So the formula basically starts out the same with sales of products that are currently working in its current lifetime, and a discount for products that are not working. We don't have to consider deducting for repeat sales here, since a repeat sale would still have a system that enables people to apply it for generating additional income. But we do have another variable here, which is IG, which stands for income generation, and it's a variable that represents the percentage of a household where a member is using the product to generate income. Now, if we then look at the variables that you can find in the paper, you see that for this coefficient, we don't just have one value, but we actually have 16 options. So first, there is a differentiation in product size, as we basically found that some systems are, logically, they're more often used for productive use purposes than others. And then secondly, here you see the different values for the different regions. The regions that we have been able to distinguish are aligned to the Powering Opportunity research. Basically, there we can distinguish between East Africa, West Africa, and South Asia. And for any product sold that is not in those regions, we have a global default that we call it. So very specifically, if you want to calculate the impact of, let's say, a 20 watt peak solar home system kits sold in West Africa, you will need to use this 12% variable here. And then, of course, logically, you also need to input only the number of sales of those particular kits in West Africa. Now, the final example is estimating the emissions that have been avoided by your products, measured in CO2 equivalents. So we start off again, basically in similar fashion, except now we want to count all sales, because if you want to estimate the total amount of CO2 equivalent that's avoided. And then there's 3 variables that follow. So you will need to enter the product life of the product that you're basically calculating this for. Since we want to count for the years, of course, that the product has been actively working and thus has been replacing kerosene lanterns. Then there is a ratio for kerosene lanterns that are being replaced by the system. That is the R. And then G is a coefficient that defines the average amount of greenhouse gases, including black carbon, in metric tons emitted annually by a kerosene lantern. So good, I got that right. So and this is maybe a good moment to point out that this is actually quite a specific CO2 or greenhouse gas emission calculation. This formula, we specifically look at kerosene lanterns being put out of use, and we don't look, for example, at diesel gensets or any other source of lighting. But those are, just on a side note, very high on our wish list to develop. Now, looking at the coefficients again, you see that for kerosene replacement, there are also different ratios across the different regions. Jomi already highlighted it, that you see that maybe in West Africa, the ratio is much lower than you can see for East Africa or South Asia. And so you need to make sure that you really use the right coefficient value. Now, I would say that is enough examples for now. I just wanted to share one final highlight that I'm taking from our sales data collection. And that is that this new regional split also allows us to be more accurate and specific in our kind of like in our narrative that we can share each half year around the global aggregated sales. So, and that's, I mean, we are really happy about this. So for those that participate in our half-yearly sales data collection, you actually have access to a personal data environment where we deliver those estimates to you, and you can browse the data and navigate everything. So you don't even have to perform those calculations yourself. But for the public reports, we have been able to include this latest split, showing that the estimate of people that are undertaking, for example, any type of economic activity, basically 44% of those are in East Africa, and similarly so for the number of kerosene lanterns replaced. You see that this is mainly the case in East and South Asia, East Africa and South Asia, and much less so for West Africa. It's really a favorite example, but one of the reasons for this discrepancy is, in addition to the fact that West Africa, while it's a growing market, it's still a smaller market than East Africa or South Asia. But also from this latest data, we saw that in West Africa, the solar products are not replacing kerosene lanterns that much, but they're replacing torches. So we cannot plug them into the same formula. Then there's a few things I would really want to make sure everyone is very aware of when using these metrics. When you use them for yourself, they're important to remember. So they are limited by best available data. We at GOGLA, with the working group, we make sure that we are as up to date as possible of all the data that is out there, and that they feed into these metrics. But it's always, it's always limited by what is available. And therefore also, results that are created by the metrics should always refer to as estimates. And you need to be very careful if, looking at your technology type, at your system size, at your business model, and at regions. So make sure that you use the right variables. The metrics apply to solar products that are sold in off-grid or underserved communities. For example, if you sell a lantern that is mainly used for, I don't know, people going camping in the US, then we really can't say that any income is generated, when with this product being sold. It's also important to know that they apply to high quality solar products. So, products that we are sure of will indeed have, live to their warranty life, or will indeed be around for at least 2 years as a minimum, and don't malfunction after 2 months on average. And the impact metric framework, and I think this is a really important point, it provides a foundation for impact reporting. So I think I would like to note here specifically that the standard values that we use are, they're still an average based on what's publicly available out there and research that we do. But it can be quite likely that you as a company have more accurate data available that applies specifically to your own customer base. So, for example, if you know that the average income generated by your customer base is much higher in a particular country that you're selling, you are encouraged to apply that knowledge and plug that into the formula as a different variable. So still using the same framework, but more accurate information so that you can get a more accurate estimate for your company specifically. So this is basically why we say we provide the basis, and then you can build on that. And then for those companies that don't have that data, they can fall back and use the standard values, for which they can still be confident that it's a robust and scientifically solid approach. The last one, it states that from 2019 H2 onwards is actually when you can apply the newly revised metrics and variables. The reason behind this is that when, as the market matures and develops over the years, some of the variables that we establish right now might be less applicable to how the market was maybe 10 years ago. So that is why ideally we recommend using this new revision for products that have been sold recently, and anything that far precedes that date should be calculated using the previous set of metrics and variables. However, we do understand that for practical reasons, if you want to calculate a long evolution, this might be difficult or pretty much impossible. So in that case, please know that also still, if you apply this framework to produce estimates, you are still working with a conservative approach, and we're not inflating results. So you can go ahead and use this latest framework regardless. And I just also want to note that to those companies that are actually submitting their data in our data collection, there the estimates are calculated taking this time evolution into account. Now, before we move to the next section, where we will showcase the online calculator tool, which is set up to support you with these calculations, because the more we expand, the more complicated it actually gets. We actually had already developed and provided an impact estimate calculator tool in the form of an Excel tool or an Excel file. So we have developed this now into an online tool, but I would actually be quite curious to know that before we introduce that, I would like to know if everyone or anyone was familiar with this previous impact metrics calculator tool, and if you've used it. And then, of course, I think later on we would love to hear, maybe through the question box or through just an email to us, how you're finding this new tool in comparison with the Excel file. All right, so there's almost like 40% that are familiar with it and have even played around with it, so that's really great. And then for the other let's say 60%, yeah, we'll be excited to showcase the online version, which we feel is going to really support you in your estimates. Chef, are you ready for a demonstration?
Yes, thanks. Yes, I am. Let me try and draw up the calculator. All right, I hope everyone can see this. Do shout if it's not the case. Let me refresh. A small,
that seems to be unfortunate.
a small technical difficulty. Let me see if I can draw up another version. There we go. Then we'll use this one. Yes, before I start, I would first of all like to thank DFID for making the development of the tool possible. And secondly, I want to mention that this is still a beta version of the tool. So you may notice some small errors, for example, grammar mistakes, but this is something that we will fix in the coming weeks. Apart from that, the tool is fully functional and you should be able to use it without any problems. So let's dive in. When you open the tool, you will be presented with a landing page you see here. Here you can see what information you need to be able to use the tool. So that is the number of sales, product specifications, and also optional data such as the number of employees. We also encourage everyone to read the limitations, which you can find here, so that you have a clear understanding when and how to use the impact metrics and the tool. Once you click I understand and agree with the above, you can start using the tool and you will be directed to the input page. Here you can input your products sold in the white square over here, their specifications, and also the number of employees down here. Here at the top, you can fill in your organization's name. So let's say X and a reporting period, say Q1 2020. Then below, you can fill in the different products that have been sold, and it's possible to make a distinction between cash or paygo, and also region. So let me fill in some products, and I'll add random figures here, so don't pay too much attention to these values. So let's say product 1 with a warranty period of 4 years, a price of $150, 360 lumens, and 20 watt peak. Then we've sold 1,000 systems in East Africa, and for example, another 500 in West Africa. If I then want to add another product, I can click here. This name is product 2, and now I can change the business type, for example, to paygo. And what you see now is that some product details change. Just like for cash, you can add the warranty period, the lumen output, and also the capacity of the panel. What changes is that instead of the retail price, you can now enter the total cost of ownership and the average repayment rate. You can see it changing here. So let's fill that in as well. Say a warranty period of 4 years. Total cost of ownership $700, a repayment rate of 90%, a lumen output of 950, and a capacity of panel 150. Then I'll add here that we sold 1,000 systems in West Africa and 1,000 in South Asia. For this example, I will stop here, but you can add as many products as you want by clicking here. And then lastly, here at the bottom, you can add data related to the total numbers of jobs in your organization, the number of jobs undertaken by women, and also the number of commission-based agents. I do want to stress that this data is separate from the impact metrics. So this data will just show up in the overview for completeness, but it will not be used for any calculations. So I'll quickly fill that in as well. And once you filled everything in, you can click the big orange button here to go to the output page. On the output page, you can see the overview of the estimated impact on 7 different topics, such as improved energy access, economic activity, energy spending, etc. As I mentioned, the jobs figures are not being used for any calculations, but they will show up in the left corner, top left corner over here. When you go to the top here, you can switch between business types and regions to show the estimated impact per business type, region, or altogether. By default, it shows both cash and paygo sold in all regions, but you can change this to cash or paygo only and a certain region only. So in this example, we sold cash products in East Africa and West Africa, and you can see the numbers change when I switch between regions. We did not sell any cash products in South Asia, so here the values will turn 0. For paygo, we We did not sell any products in East Africa, so there the values will be 0. But we did in West Africa and also in South Asia. If you look at kerosene lanterns replaced, you can nicely see the effect of the regional split. Although we sold the same number of products in each region, the number of kerosene lanterns replaced is lower in South Asia compared to West Africa. This is because we are using a different ratio, informed by the additional data that we gathered. And this is, for example, also the case for economic activity you can see here. This is now for West Africa. If I change it to South Asia, you will see that the number is lower. In case you would like to still add additional products, you can return to the input page by clicking here. And you can also go back to the start by clicking here. Once you fill everything in and you are happy with the output, you can download the output in an Excel file by clicking the download button at the right. Once you click that button, you will get an output in an Excel file. So you can easily copy and paste the values in your own reporting. And you have different tabs here where you can switch between business types and also region. I think that's it for the tool. It's quite straightforward. One thing I would like to add is that we will finalize the tool in the coming weeks, but we encourage you to test it already. So play around with it, and please do let us know if you encounter any problems or have any general feedback. Like I said, there are still a few grammar mistakes, but other than that, the tool is fully functional. But your feedback is greatly appreciated, as that will help us improve the tool. So please do share your comments by sending an email to Evelien. And then I want to thank you very much for your time. The tool will be on our website from today onwards and accessible for everyone to use. And we really hope that the tool will be helpful for you and your organization in estimating your impact. Thank you. And then, Evelien, I want to hand it back over to you.
Cool. Thanks so much, Chef. Let's see. I think I might need. Oh. I might need control of the keyboard again, or can you advance the slide? Fantastic. Yeah, as Chef already mentioned, we're keen to hear your thoughts, so don't hesitate to share any and all feedback that you have. Just 1 second before we move to the Q&A section, I want to briefly highlight at this point in time that our Impact Working Group is now focusing on the development of impact metrics for appliances. This is a project done in partnership with EST and Efficiency for Access Coalition, funded by DFID, by UKA. And this year we are basically focusing or putting our efforts towards metrics for fans and TVs. And by next year, we will be looking at solar water pumps and refrigeration units. So if there is an appetite or an interest from anyone on the line to be involved in this discussion around and development of these metrics, then please don't hesitate to let me know. Then I will have a look of what has come in the question box. I already just briefly now spotted one question that Chef, I think you will also be able to speak to, is, and we're going to stick on the calculator tool for just a little bit. How are the data protected and used by GOGLA once you have filled in the tool as a company, for example?
Yeah, we do not save any of the data that is entered in the tool. This is not stored on any server. So it will also be deleted once you close the tool. So if you fill in the tool and then download the Excel, you can then save the output that you generated, and we won't save any of your data.
Exactly. I see one other question in the question box that is from Brett Miles. Brett, I will ask you for, I think maybe just a quick example, because you're asking if there's other business types or models that would be considered in the tool. Could you give a quick example of what you would be thinking of? Maybe we can get back on that in a little bit. So there's a few questions that I would love to highlight. Jonathan Close asks, how does the CO2 saving metrics match up with the total product life cycle, including manufacturing, transport, and end-of-life disposal? So at this point in time, our greenhouse gas emission metric that we can confidently produce and present is actually only focusing on the replacement of kerosene lanterns. As I already said, like also already other sources of energy are on our wish list, and also transport emissions and end-of-life disposal. Those are all topics that we would need more data for before we can kind of move towards proposing anything around that. And that loops in a little bit with some other remarks that I have spotted. There's a question if there's a recycle variable that takes into consideration if products that have come to the end of their lifespan are recyclable, and if there is commitment to recycling used products by suppliers. I think it's really interesting that this topic comes up already this much in this webinar. So thank you also Siobhan Franklin. Again, at this moment, unfortunately, we don't have that, but I'll be sure to bring this discussion to the working group to see what can be done there. So Arnoud Schalk has asked a question, and Nabila, I don't know if you're still on the line, but I think you might be well placed to kind of like speak to this topic as well. So he asks, based on all data collected at GOGLA, what is the relation between improved impact performance and financial performance? So his own belief is that it's directly related. Impact is an illustration of the company practices, and impact strategies enable to measure company practices and make sure that they're sustainable. And it's therefore directly related to the business operations and therefore financials. So it's beyond attraction of investors and reporting. It's a tool to manage businesses as financial performance.
Okay, I'm going to try and see how much I can cover. That's quite a few things. I mean, I think largely it's around how we're thinking about the correlation between impact performance and financial performance. So, I mean, from an impact perspective, I think we're at a stage where we're confident in being able to say, look, there are impact that this industry is having at the outcome level in terms of changing the lives of people that we aim to reach through our investments. In terms of the financial performance and the correlation of that, we recognize that this is actually still a fairly early industry. I mean, it has been around for 10 years, and it has progressed over time, and the actors and the type of business models that we have now have evolved quite significantly as well over time. So I think in terms of as an institution for investors, we ourselves have actually not brought those two together as of yet. So I think one of the things we're looking to do is these sorts of metrics that enable us to understand impact by for instance, size of the product, as well as looking at appliances, will allow us to have the nuanced view on impact that we can then run those analyses. But so far, we ourselves have actually been hesitant to see whether there is that correlation just yet. But we are benchmarking, for instance, on impact performance. We do internal benchmark when we invest to see, if we're looking at a new proposition, how does that compare with what we see on average in our portfolio, given that we have other investee businesses that we've already have impact data for, as well as our kind of top performers. So that's how, and that actually does drive our investment decision. For instance, from our investment committee, they would do look at that benchmarking exercise as well. What else was there? Sorry, can you?
Yeah, there is. We're getting near the end of the webinar as well. But let's finish this question. So I think in addition, it was more kind of like his own perspective, and that indeed it's like directly related.
I mean, if it's helpful, I'm happy to pick this up outside of this webinar as well, for short on time, if that would be helpful. So if they can email us, or if Evelyn, if you have the question already, we can answer this via email, if that would be helpful.
Yeah, I just also got a note that he's thanks for the reply, and he will be in touch via email. That's perfect. And I would actually very sorry for all the questions that are coming in now. I would want to propose the same. Let's be in. I will reach out via email to those that have answered, like asked the question, and provide you with an answer as well.
Right. Thank you.
All right. Then I would like to thank everyone just for their time, for their attention and engagement. I really hope we made it as clear as possible. If there's any questions remaining, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. And if there's any interest to be part of the impact working group, or to know anything more on the work that GOGLA is doing with impact calculation, or also on our research activities, please be in touch. Thanks so much, Nabila and Yomi and Chef, for joining me. And have a great afternoon, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, Evelyn. Bye, everyone.